Ice cream. It is one of the nation's most favored desserts, yet one of the body's most despised. If you have ever suffered from a brain freeze, you know why this is the case. Because we get a terrible stabbing sensational pain just behind our foreheads whenever we eat or drink something cold. Well, after being a victim of the brain freeze for over 19 years, I decided to do some extensive research as to why this pain occurs inside of my head and inside of the heads of many others. First, I will explain when brain freezes occur and why they occur. Next, I will discuss the scientific process behind why brain freezes hurt so bad. And finally, I will inform you how to avoid or lessen the pain of a brain freeze if you do come across one. Essentially, brain freezes occur due to our body's natural instinct to protect the brain. When something cold hits the roofs of our mouths, also known as the palate of our mouths, our bodies actually think that there's a chance that our brain will freeze over, and they therefore try to protect it. According to an article written by chemistry expert Dr. Anne-Marie Helmenstein, the brain freeze actually has a scientific name. That scientific name is sphenopalatine ganglioneuralgia, which essentially means nerve pain of the sphenopalatine ganglion. Now I'll explain what that means in a second, but since that's a mouthful, for the remainder of my time, I will refer to that simply as a brain freeze. Now, in an article published by the American Headache Society, MD Matthew S. Robbins states, the sphenopalatine ganglion, which I mentioned earlier, is a collection of nerve cells that is closely associated with the trigeminal nerve, which is the main nerve involved in headache disorders. He then goes on to mention that this nerve is located behind our noses and above our mouths. Therefore, when something cold hits someone's palate, it stimulates that nerve, which ultimately is the cause of the temporary brain freeze. Dr. Helmenstein then goes on to explain that when something cold touches the roofs of our mouths, in order to warm it back up, blood is sent to the affected area in order to protect the brain. And the blood is sent due to these nerves that I mentioned earlier being stimulated, the nerves of the sphenopalatine ganglion. So now, if you've never experienced this pain, don't worry about it. There was a study done by Joseph Houlihan, assistant professor at the Department of Neurology at Temple University Health and Sciences Center, that proves that only 1/3 of people experience brain freezes. So it's actually uncommon to experience brain freezes. Now that we have learned in simple terms that brain freezes occur when something cold stimulates the nerves that are just above our mouths and the sphenopalatine ganglion, I will now go on to explain why this stimulation hurts so bad. While attempting to warm the cold parts of our mouths, I said earlier that blood is rushed to the affected area. This then causes the blood cells that are just above, the blood vessels, that are just above our mouths to swell. Now, in a broader picture, these swelling blood vessels are ultimately the cause of the brain freeze pain. However, the pain does go a little bit deeper than just swollen blood vessels. In an article posted by Huffington Post, Rachel Tepper states, previously scientists had thought that brain freeze was simply the result of too quick cooling and rewarming of the blood vessels. However, the pain goes a little bit deeper than that, as I said earlier. Once there was a study done then by Harvard Medical School that proved that migraine sufferers actually are more susceptible to brain freezes. Therefore, scientists assume that there must be a correlation between migraines, headaches, and also brain freezes. They then came to the conclusion that this correlation occurs due to one main mechanism: local changes in brain blood flow. So, if blood flow is ultimately what is stimulating the pain, why does it hurt so bad? Well, according to research done, again by Harvard Medical School, and then later explained by Jennifer Welsh, the brain is sensitive to temperature, and therefore, when blood is rushed to the roofs of our mouths, it is rushed through the anterior cerebral artery, which is located right in the center of all of our brains. Pressure is then added within the skull due to the swelling of both the artery and of the swelling just above our mouths within the blood vessels. So therefore, when the pressure adds, it stimulates both the sphenopalatine ganglion that I mentioned and also pain receptors. So that ultimately is why brain freezes hurt so bad. When the artery and the blood vessels then constrict and shrink in, that is when we feel that relief, finally, of our brain freeze. So now that you know why brain freezes occur and why they hurt so bad, I will provide you with some advice to ultimately avoid them or to lessen the pain if you do come across one. It's really as simple as it sounds. The brain is sensitive to temperature. So therefore, if you eat or drink whatever you're consuming that is cold, if you eat it or drink it slowly, It allows the mouth to adjust to it faster. You can also do the same thing by holding whatever cold item is in your mouth at the front of your mouth. In an article written by Matt Soniak, who has contributed to Men's Health and Sciences magazine, The Atlantic, and also Scientific American, he states that eating or drinking cold food slowly allows one mouth to get used to the temperature. He adds later that holding whatever it is at the front of your mouth for a longer time warms it up, and so when you swallow, it's warmer than it was when it entered your mouth. He then talks about how the back of your palate is more susceptible to brain freezes than the front of your palate is. However, if you don't follow these instructions, or you do and you still experience a brain freeze, there are steps that can be made to make the pain go away faster. Chemistry expert Dr. Anne-Marie Helmenstein, whom I mentioned earlier, states that the fastest ways that cause brain freezes and to also rid of them are rapid temperature changes. Therefore, colder temperatures are less susceptible to brain freezes because their mouth is already cold. So if I'm in Alaska, my mouth is already cold. My mouth is already used to it. So if something cold enters my mouth, I'm less likely to get a brain freeze than if I'm here in Arizona, where my mouth is naturally hot due to the temperature. So then if a rapid temperature change causes the brain freeze, a rapid temperature change can also rid one. Therefore, if you press your thumb or your tongue, she writes, to the roof of your mouth, it will get rid of your brain freeze sooner than if you just try to tough it out. So now that we have learned how to either prevent or stop brain freezes, let's conclude with a review. First, I explained how cold temperatures in our mouths cause our body to naturally want to protect the brain by warming it up and stimulating the nerves above our mouths, the body of which represent the sphenopalatine ganglion. I then showed you how blood being directed to the brain through the anterior cerebral artery causes swelling in both that artery and also in the blood vessels, within just above our mouths, which then causes pressure within our skull, which then triggers pain receptors. Finally, I told you how to avoid the terrible pain that is a brain freeze, or how to rid of it faster if you do come across one. So in conclusion, if you are a victim of brain freezes like I am, you already know that the pain we experience is awful. However, I hope that today you have learned that this pain is ultimately a reaction of our bodies that is not evil, but rather cold-blooded.